I'm Jesse Schober with the Twitty Titus for District 173 of the Georgia House campaign, and I'm with herself, Twitty Titus.
Hey, Jesse.
Thank you for being here. And so what we're doing today is we're going to start a series of videos where we're trying to explain who the candidate Twitty Titus is. And how I met Twitty is I went to a coffee and politics thing in Thomasville because I was trying to, I guess, seek out other Democrats in the area because I felt like we were unicorns. And so I went to go find other ones, and I met her, and talking about veterans issues, she got up and passionately talked about mental health and health care for veterans in an off-the-cuff way that was really inspirational. And that made me start working for you. And so that's what I want people to see, is who you are and why someone who you didn't know would just jump to the ready and start working for you.
Well, I'm very happy that whatever I said attracted you. So that's a blessing to me as well. And I want people to know who I am. I want people to have an opportunity to get to know me, size me up, and make a decision about whether or not I could represent them at the state level and advance what they feel passionate about. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity.
Good. So let's start with, you're born and raised in Thomasville.
Absolutely. And I'm jokingly, but not really, often say I'm the rabbit in the briar patch here. I was not only born here, but everybody in my family since the 1830s was born here, just about. And so while like most teenagers, I couldn't wait to leave, but the boomerang effect took hold and I came back, and I have invested my life in Thomasville and this region, just as my father, grandfather, great-grandfathers, mothers, aunts, uncles, everybody in my clan has lived and thrived and worked here, and I want to see that go forward. I feel like it's possibly at risk right now, and the reason I want to take a more high-profile, influential role is I want the last 150 years of good decisions to go forward for the next century.
So Theo Titus, that was your dad.
Mm-hmm. Theo Titus was my dad. He served for 10 years in the Georgia legislature representing this region. He was known as a very devoted steward of the natural world, a conservationist, and
He wrote an article for the Times Enterprise for a long time, right?
He did. He wrote a Sunday article for 20 years, over 1,000 articles, dealing with local history, flora, fauna, hunting, fishing, conservation, all to do with the world of nature in this region. So he's probably best known for that. Okay,
so you would say, though, your family probably has a conservative legacy, which you are definitely not.
I would say my family has a legacy of devotion to the best interests of this area. You can put any label you care to on it because, as we all know, the definitions of those labels evolve and change. So I think some of my ancestors were Democrats, some were Republicans, but they were all devoted servants of this region and the highest and best interest of the people and the land of this region. So the label is far less important than the values and the character and the perspective of the person at that moment in history.
The other thing that brought me to you, outside of your political stuff, was you asked about my wife. My wife teaches autism in classes at Southside Elementary. And you mentioned the fact that of your 4 children, one of them is autistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That has to be a shaping part of who you are as a person, as a leader, and as going to be a legislator.
Mm-hmm. Certainly it is. I had 3 daughters, and then I had a son, and my son is a very high-functioning autistic guy. So clearly I bring a personal concern and a lot of personal experience to the needs of young people and adults, because he's an adult now, who have special needs and need different education and different mental health supports. That's a real life experiential issue for me, and I'm going to put a lot of focus on that. We all know now that autism is expanding, and there are many, many more young people being born with autism. So that overlaps with research, education, parenting, and evolution through life. At some point, those autistic children will be old autistic people. So it goes through the whole lifespan, and we've got to address it. It's not optional.
The other thing that really drew me to you is we were talking about my military service, and you explained that you had an adopted son who served in the military, and it was rough for him towards the end of a lot of it.
I didn't legally adopt him, but he lived with me for a year. He then went on to become a Marine. He was a crack sniper, being exceptionally good at what he did. He got to do it quite a lot. He then left the military, was not comfortable in the civilian world, and returned to the military. He wound up being a sniper trainer, a general's bodyguard, he went to Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, the U.S.-Mexican border, and it took a toll on him. And he is struggling, and I think that he's not atypical. It's very important that we look at this straight on and put our money where our mouth is. We've got to put resources in place early, not late, in every strata of this issue. And right now, I think where we are is just simply not adequate. These issues can and will destroy a life, and usually that means destroying a family. So these people have given up ownership of their lives to us, and now we own it. We have to take care of it and give it back to them intact, whatever it takes. There are no excuses.
So we talked about your family's legacy of legislative action, and you waited till late in your life to get involved. And I asked you this question a few weeks ago, and what you told me is you had a side venture where you led the fight against Huntington's disease.
Yeah. Another real life connection. You know how probably you don't yet because you're a young father, but eventually your children will have boyfriends and girlfriends, and you might fall in love with them like I did. And one of my daughters had a boyfriend who I fell in love with. He was an adorable young man, but I could tell that something was holding back his full embrace of life, and it came to my attention that his family was struggling with Huntington's disease. At that point, I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of it.
So for people who don't know, Huntington's is?
It is a dominantly transmitted genetic disease that is a brain disease. It has a late in life onset, meaning usually people are in their third, fourth, or fifth decade, 30, 40, 50 years old, before the symptoms onset. But because it's dominantly transmitted, if you get one Huntington's gene from one parent, you will develop the disease. It goes through a family like brown eyes. There was no treatment, no cure, no way to diagnose whether you had inherited the gene or not. So at first I just kind of screamed at the universe and rent my garments, and finally when I got over all that, I thought, well, I got to do something. I can't just sit here and be upset. So I sought out someone who did know about Huntington's disease and wound up being connected to the Huntington's Disease Society of America in New York. They then connected me to someone in Atlanta, and lo and behold, the Emory University Genetics Lab had a specialist there who was also interested in Huntington's disease. So we all connected. I wound up going to Washington and going door to door in the Congress with a friend who had Huntington's disease, saying, we're concerned about our friends who have Huntington's disease. What the result of it, this was the mid-'80s, and by the '90s we got an NIH funding designated to make it the year of the decade of the brain. And what resulted from that was the mapping of the entire human genome, which resulted in lots of clues and even some cures and pathways forward in major brain research. And I'm very sorry to tell you that I wasn't quite in time for my beloved young friend. He did subsequently develop the disease, and last year he died. But I did not regret pushing that forward, because the outcome of it was that eventually it became possible to diagnose whether or not you had inherited that gene, which helps with making life decisions. What kind of career, whether you want to parent children. So I guess it was one of those moments in life when I had a choice. You know, I could just sit there and be sad and cry, or I could get up and march out and try to do something about it. And so I did, and I'm humbled and honored to say I was chosen as an unsung hero by the Huntington's Disease Society of America. And the only thing that matters about is to say that I'm a person who, I suppose because of family culture and maybe my DNA, who feels compelled to take action in the face of a significant problem.
And that's exactly what you're doing for District 173 right now.
That's exactly what I'm doing right now. I would love to spend my life gardening and playing with my 2 beautiful granddaughters. I still intend to do plenty of that. But I see us at a crossroads in southwest Georgia. It's very clear. The Georgia Chamber has spelled out the research. We're spiraling down economically. Our young people are leaving for better opportunities in big cities because they can't find the opportunities they need here. Our hospitals are struggling and some are closing. We have children in the 3rd grade, more who cannot read at a 3rd grade level than can. And horrors of horrors, we have the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. And nobody's talking about that. So basically I'm facing another Huntington's disease question. Am I going to just sit around and be sad? Or am I going to get out and do the research, pay the price, gather the cohorts that care and share my values, and march in lockstep out against the problem and conquer it? That's what needs to happen. The other alternative is don't do anything. And that's unthinkable. It's unthinkable. We have a choice right now in the next decade to turn the big wheel around in southwest Georgia or to sit and watch as we just spiral down. I'm not going to sit and watch, and I don't think the people who share my values will either.
I absolutely agree with you. And hopefully that you watching this will also agree with us and you will march to the polls on November 6th and elect Twitty Titus to District 173 in Georgia. Please stay tuned for more videos on policy-directed issues and all the things she really feels passionately about. Thank you for joining us for this video today.